Okay. Okay, how's it going, everyone? So, we're going to read some Joseph Stalin today. It's from 1924. It's from the speech, Trotskyism, or no, it's in Pravda. Pravda, it's from Pravda in Trotskyism or Leninism is what it's called. There's 3 sections here. There's also a little introduction, so I'll read that as well. This first one. The first one, see the facts about the October Rising, the party and the preparation for October, and 3, Trotskyism or Leninism. So the first one is the facts about the October Uprising. We'll go ahead and read the facts about the October Uprising. Okay. Let's go ahead. It starts out with a little introduction, and then it goes into it. Comrades, after Kamenev's comprehensive report, there is little left for me to say. I shall therefore confine myself to exposing certain legends that are being spread by Trotsky and his supporters about the October Uprising, about Trotsky's role in the uprising, about the party and the preparation for October, and so forth. I shall also touch upon Trotskyism as a peculiar ideology that is incompatible with Leninism, and upon the party's task in connection with Trotsky's latest literary pronouncements. Okay, so that was the introduction. Here's part 1, the facts about the October Uprising. First of all, about the October Uprising. Rumors are being vigorously spread among members of the party that the Central Committee as a whole was opposed to an uprising in October 1917. The usual story is that on October 10th, when the Central Committee adopted the decision to organize the uprising, the majority of the Central Committee at first spoke against an uprising. But, so the story runs, at that moment, a worker burst in on the meeting of the Central Committee and said, quote, "You are deciding against an uprising, but I tell you that there will be an uprising all the same, in spite of everything," end quote. And so after the threat, the story runs, the Central Committee, which is alleged to have become frightened, raised the question of an uprising afresh and adopted a decision to organize it. This is not merely a rumor, comrades. It is related by the well-known John Reed in his book, 10 Days. Reed was remote from our party and, of course, could not know the history of our secret meeting on October 10th. And consequently, he was taken in by the gossip spread by people like Sukhanov. This story was later passed around and repeated in a number of pamphlets written by Trotskyites, including one of the latest pamphlets on October written by Sirkin. These rumors have been strongly supported in Trotsky's latest literary pronouncements. It scarcely needs proof that all these and similar Arabian Night, in quotes, quote, Arabian Nights, in quotes, fairy tales are not in accordance with the truth. That in fact, nothing of the kind happened, nor could have happened, at the meeting of the Central Committee. Consequently, we could ignore these absurd rumors. After all, lots of rumors are fabricated in the office rooms of the oppositionists, or those who are remote from the party. Indeed, we have ignored them till now. For example, we paid no attention to John Reed's mistakes and did not take the trouble to rectify them. After Trotsky's latest pronouncements, however, it is no longer possible to ignore such legends, for attempts are being made now to bring up our young people on them, and, unfortunately, some results have already been achieved in this respect. In view of this, I must counter these absurd rumors with the actual facts. I take the minutes of the meetings of the Central Committee of our party on October 10th, 23rd, 1917. Trotsky, Sverdlov, Uritsky, Dzerzhinsky, Kollontai, Buvnov, Sokolnikov, Lomov. The question of the current situation in the uprising was discussed. After the discussion, Comrade Lenin's resolution on the uprising was put to the vote. The resolution was adopted by a majority of 10 against 2. Clear, one would think, by a majority of 10 against 2, the Central Committee decided to proceed with the immediate practical work of organizing the uprising. At this very same meeting, the Central Committee elected a political center to direct the uprising. This center, called the Political Bureau, consisted of Lenin, Zinoviev, Stalin, Kamenev, Trotsky, Sokolnikov, and Bubnov. Such are the facts. These minutes at one stroke destroy several legends. They destroy the legend that the majority of the Central Committee was opposed to an uprising. They also destroy the legend that on the question of the uprising, the Central Committee was on the verge of a split. It is clear from the minutes that the opponents of an immediate uprising, Kamenev and Zinoviev, were elected to the body that was to exercise political direction of the uprising on a par with those who were in favor of an uprising. There is no question of a split, nor could there be. Trotsky asserts that in October, our party had a right wing in the persons of Kamenev and Zinoviev, who, he says, were almost social democrats. What one cannot understand then is how those circumstances it could happen that the party avoided a split. How it could happen that the disagreements with Kamenev and Zinoviev lasted only a few days. How it could happen that, in spite of those disagreements, the party appointed these comrades to highly important posts, elected them to the political center of the uprising, and so forth. Lenin's implacable attitude towards social democrats is sufficiently well known in the party. The party knows that Lenin would not for a single moment have agreed to have social democratically minded comrades in the party, let alone in highly important posts. How then are we to explain the fact that the party avoided a split? The explanation is that in spite of the disagreements, these comrades were old Bolsheviks who stood on the common ground of Bolshevism. What was that common ground? Unity of views on the fundamental questions. The character of the Russian Revolution, the driving forces of the revolution, the role of the peasantry, the principles of party leadership, and so forth. Had there not been this common ground, a split would have been inevitable. There was no split, and the disagreements lasted only a few days because Kamenev, Zinoviev were Leninist Bolsheviks. Let us now pass to the legend about Trotsky's special role in the October uprising. The Trotskyites are vigorously spreading rumors that Trotsky inspired and was the sole leader of the October uprising. These rumors are being spread with exceptional zeal by the so-called editor of Trotsky's works, Lenzner. Trotsky himself, by consistently avoiding mention of the party, the Central Committee, and the Petrograd Committee of the party, by saying nothing about the leading role of these organizations in the uprising, and vigorously pushing himself forward as the central figure in the October uprising, voluntarily or involuntarily helps to spread the rumors about the special role he is supposed to have played in the uprising. I am far from denying Trotsky's undoubtedly important role in the uprising. I must say, however, that Trotsky did not play any special role in the October uprising, nor could he do so. Being chairman of the Petrograd Soviet, he merely carried out the will of the appropriate party bodies, which directed every step that Trotsky took. The Philistines, like Sukhanov, all this may seem strange, but the facts, the true facts, wholly and fully confirm what I say. Let us take the minutes of the next meeting of the Central Committee, the one held on October 16, 1917. Present, the members of the Central Committee, plus representatives of the Petrograd Committee, plus representatives of the military organization, factory committees, trade unions, and the railwaymen. I lost my place. Among those present, besides the members of the Central Committee, were Krylenko, Shotman, Kalinin, Volodarsky, Shla-Nikov, Lassis, and others, 25 in all. The question of the uprising was discussed from the purely practical organizational aspect. Lenin's resolution on the uprising was adopted by a majority of 20 against 2, 3 abstaining. A practical center was elected for the organizational leadership of the uprising. Who was elected to the center? The following 5: Sverdlov, Stalin, Dushinsky, Bubnov, Ritsky. The functions of the practical center to direct all the practical organs of the uprising in conformity with the directives of the Central Committee. Thus, as you see, something terrible happened at this meeting of this. Something terrible, in quotes, happened at this meeting of the Central Committee, i.e., quote, strange to relate, end quote, the quote inspirer, the quote chief figure, the quote sole leader of the uprising, Trotsky, was not elected to the practical center, which was called upon to direct the uprising. How was this to be reconciled with the current opinion about Trotsky's special role? Is not all this somewhat, quote, strange? As Sukhanov or the Trotskyites would say, and yet, strictly speaking, there's nothing strange about it, for neither in the party nor in the October Rising did Trotsky play any special role, nor could he do so, for he was a relatively new man in our party in the period of October. He, like all the responsible workers, merely carried out the will of the Central Committee and its organs. Whoever is familiar with the mechanics of Bolshevik party leadership will have no difficulty in understanding that it could not be otherwise. It would have been enough for Trotsky to have gone against the will of the Central Committee, to have been deprived of influence on the course of events. This talk about Trotsky's special role is a legend that is being spread by obliging party gossips. This, of course, does not mean that the October uprising did not have its inspirer. It did have its inspirer and leader, but this was Lenin, and none other than Lenin. That same Lenin whose resolutions the Central Committee adopted when deciding the question of the uprising. That same Lenin who, in spite of what Trotsky says, was not prevented by being in hiding from being the actual inspirer of the uprising. It is foolish and ridiculous to attempt now, by gossip about Lenin having been in hiding, to obscure the indubitable fact that the inspirer of the uprising was the leader of the party, B.I. Lenin. Such are the facts. Granted, we are told, but it cannot be denied, that Trotsky fought well in the period of October. Yes, that is true. Trotsky did indeed fight well in October. But Trotsky was not the only one who fought well in the period of October. That part's almost funny. Okay. Was not the only one that, because it's the whole revolution. The idea of Trotsky being out there just carrying all the Bolsheviks who are like, all like, being like, oh, we're scared. Okay. Anyway. It's funny he says that. I know Stalin has kind of like a... I'm going to take a pause real quick. Stalin has kind of like, he's kind of a smart aleck. Like, he's a smart ass almost, you know. And like, I think that's why people love him. And I think that's why, you know, the people loved him. Because, yeah, he was kind of a roughneck. He was known as a good fighter. He'd always been a good fighter. And he'd always been, rugged like that. But in his writings, he has this like almost this, it makes things out to look stupid. Like, he's good at doing that. It's pretty funny. Like, if something's stupid, he makes it out to look stupid. He has no problem at doing that. It's kind of his personality, and it's kind of that, that realness about him that I'm sure that people, appreciated. Because, I mean, in general, I feel like people like relatable, not politicians, or relatable leaders of their country. They want the leaders of their country. They like it when they're relatable and they feel good about them. They get, feel good feelings from them, I guess, And even if that's, being a smart ass about things, that's a relatable human characteristic, I guess, Anyway, so where was I at? Even people like the left socialist revolutionaries, who then stood side by side with the Bolsheviks, also fought well. In general, I must say that in the period of a victorious uprising, when the enemy is isolated and the uprising is growing, it is not difficult to fight well. At such moments, even backward people become heroes. The proletarian struggle is not, however, an uninterrupted advance, an unbroken chain of victories. An unbroken chain of victories. The proletarian struggle also has its trials, its defeats. The genuine revolutionary is not one who displays courage in the period of a victorious uprising, but one who, while fighting well during the victorious advance of the revolution, also displays courage when the revolution is in retreat. When the proletariat suffers defeat, who does not lose his head and does not funk when the revolution suffers reverses? When the enemy achieves success, who does not become panic-stricken or give way to despair. When the revolution is in a period of retreat. My dog likes to drink water every time I come in here and read. Okay. The left socialist revolutionaries did not fight badly in the period of October, and they supported the Bolsheviks. But who does not know that those brave fighters became panic-stricken in the period of Brest, when the advance of German imperialism drove them to despair and hysteria? It is a very sad but undubitable fact that Trotsky, who fought well in the period of October, did not in the period of Brest, in the period when the revolution suffered temporary reverses, possess the courage to display sufficient staunchness at that difficult moment and to refrain from following the footsteps of the left socialist revolutionaries. Beyond question, that moment was a difficult one. One had to display exceptional courage and imperturbable coolness, not to be dismayed, to retreat in good time, to accept peace in good time, to withdraw the proletarian army out of the range of the blows of German imperialism, to preserve the peasant reserves, and after obtaining a respite in this way, to strike at the enemy with renewed force. Unfortunately, Trotsky was found to lack this courage and revolutionary staunchness at that difficult moment. In Trotsky's opinion, the principal lesson of the proletarian revolution is not to funk, quote, not to funk, end quote, during October. That is wrong, for Trotsky's assertion contains only a particle of the truth about the lessons of the revolution. The whole truth about the lessons of the proletarian revolution is, quote, not to funk, end quote, not only when the revolution is advancing, but also when it is in retreat, when the enemy is gaining the upper hand and the revolution is suffering reverses. The revolution did not end with October. October was only the beginning of the proletarian revolution. It is bad to funk when the tide of insurrection is rising, but it is worse to funk when the revolution is passing through severe trials. After power has been captured, to retain power on the morrow of the revolution is no less important than to capture power. If Trotsky funked during the period of Brest, when our revolution was passing through severe trials, when it was almost a matter of surrendering power, almost a matter of, quote, surrendering power, he ought to know that the mistakes committed by Kamenev and Zinoviev in October are quite irrelevant here. That is how matters stand with the legends about the October Uprising. Okay. So yeah, that was the facts about the October Uprising. Yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. You know, Marxist Soft, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, TikTok, Medium. What else? I think that's it. Maybe more. Follow me. Hit me up. Whatever, you know. Feel free to hit me up anytime. Yeah. Y'all have a great day. Do that go.